Good night. You're watching the 2020 edition of the Forum on European Culture, live from the Bali in Amsterdam. My name is Sophie Derkzen. I'm a journalist from the Netherlands. I'm a radio host for the Dutch public broadcaster VPRO, and I'm very happy to be the one guiding you through this program, Power to the People. This summer has been historic in many ways, obviously, but also in terms of activist activity. We've seen Black Lives Matter protests all around the globe. We've seen protests in Belarus, in Hungary, in Hong Kong, just to name a few. And in this program, we will talk to the leaders, or at least the initiators of 6 protest movements that are currently taking to the streets in Europe and beyond. What do they have in common, and how did they continue to operate under lockdown? And of course, we will ask them what is the future they are striving for in Europe and beyond. Some of our speakers will be joining us online, but we're very happy that we have at least 2 of them present here with us in Amsterdam. Yes, peace. There is Naomie Pieter from Amsterdam, and we have Mattia. Mattia, now all of a sudden I can't find your name. Woohoo, where are you? Just introduce yourself.
Santori.
Santori, of course. How could I forget? From Bologna in Italy.
Yeah.
But first, we will be going to Hong Kong, since we have the opportunity to talk to an important person there in the protest, in organizing the protest with all of those people there taking the streets. We asked him to share his lessons for protest movements in Europe, and we will be listening to Wong Yik Mo. He will join our conversation live from Hong Kong, but let's first listen to the message he has recorded for us.
I would like to share with you 4 tips for a large movement like Hong Kong's protest movement. And the first one is to work together to support each other. Besides the peaceful demonstration and the radical fighting that's reported by the media, there are actually many unseen actions. People do support each other with whatever way they can. People buy food vouchers to give to young protesters so that they don't have to starve. Some even provide shelters for those who were kicked out by their parents. Drivers pick up protesters to avoid police at public transports or when the public transports were shut down by the government. Doctors and medics organize underground hospitals because public and even private hospitals are no longer safe. Security guards try to hold doors to stop police from storming into shopping malls because they are not allowed to. Elderlies also take to the street with youngsters to protect them, hoping the police wouldn't beat them because they're old. But they're wrong, because the police beat everybody but gangsters who support the police. And from my personal experience, I was saved by somebody who opened the door to let me in while the police shot tear gas at me and ran after me. My next tip is be water, be flexible, but do not kowtow. We all know China is very good at changing red lines. Things allowed today might be forbidden tomorrow. And if you compromise every time, in the end, you might start censoring yourself. First, they created the notion of Hong Kong independence so that they could frame us as separatists. Then they say self-determination is a form of independence. And later on, when the national security law is in force, they say the slogan, "Free Hong Kong alone," is separatism. And by chanting it or posting it on your social media platform is a breach of the law with a maximum penalty of lifelong imprisonment. To be safe, some people created this image to replace the slogan. But later on, even when holding blank paper in the street is deemed as breach of the law, what do we do next? This is the chilling effect that China wants to create. This is white terror. So the only way to counter this is to continue doing what you think is right. When the police ban peaceful demonstrations, we continue to take to the streets. When the government announces anti-mask law, bypassing the legislature, we continue to wear masks. And when they ban slogans, of course we do continue to chant slogans. We see this movement as a war, and we do see the government and China as our enemy. So my next tip is to know your enemy. It takes a very long time for most Hong Kongers to accept the truth that fighting within the institution alone will never get us democracy and freedom. One of the appeals in the movement was to have democracy, to have free election. But now even our election has been cancelled by China. After 1 year of protests, what we got was not democracy, it was national security law. And that is the reality. I would like to warn the world that China doesn't believe in universal values. Sacrificing all the human rights principles to compromise to China for all the trade deals does not make the world better. Last but not least, this movement is called Leaderless movement in Hong Kong. It all started with a mass demonstration organized by Civil Human Rights Front. But it then developed and evolved as people start to pick up their own roles without depending on one leader. Some created social media channels and pages. Some employees organized unions. Parents, elderly, civil servants, aviation sector staff, teachers, for example, organized assemblies. Office lady, firemen, medics, journalists, housewives, overseas Hong Kongers, they all support this movement with whatever way they can. Nobody's the hero, and everybody is a hero. I would like to remind fellow Europeans, when the society needs you, you have the responsibility to stand up and believe in yourself because you have the ability to make changes.
Thank you very much, Wong Yik Mo, for your video message, and thank you for joining us online. Hopefully you can hear us here in Amsterdam. Let's see if that works out. Yes, well, at least I see some other familiar faces. Yes, Wong Yik Mo, you're there. Hello, Mo.
Hi, I think there's a time lag. I'm still hearing my own voice.
Okay, then I'll just talk, not too quick and give you the opportunity to answer. Just following up on your message, you described that instead of free elections, as you put it, you've got this very fierce national security law imposed on you. Can you describe us, how do you keep faith or the courage for that matter to keep going on after this year of protests? It's a very long time lapse. It looks as if he's hearing us.
What I think what Hong Kong has a very unique history, very sad history. We never got to decide our own fates. Yes, it is. I think it's like 10 seconds time lag. But anyway, so I think for Hong Kongers, the protest last year gave us sorry, I'm still hearing myself. All right, so I think the reason why we Hong Kongers are still protesting and are still fighting despite the national security law is because of the movement last year, because we saw solidarity, we see hope in ourselves. And just by seeing how many people have sacrificed themselves of going to jail, for example, or who died, who were murdered by we don't know who. Well, the police wouldn't investigate. So I think all these factors make us even firmer in believing in, in the determination of fighting back to have our own city of freedom.
Thank you, Mo, for your elaboration. Let's see if we can fix the time lapse for you and hopefully also for the other panelists who are joining us online. I suggest that we start off then here in Amsterdam live with the two of you here. Naomie Pieter, let me introduce you properly. Intersectional queer and anti-racist activist, founder of Bondi Pride and co-founder of Black Queer and Trans Resistance Netherlands, as well as the founder of Black Pride Netherlands. Lot of functions for you. You must be a very busy woman.
I am.
How have you listened to Mo's speech? What is your main takeaway from what he's been telling you guys as European movement?
I recognize it. I recognize a lot. I resonate with a lot also.
What exactly?
Well, the working together. I think here in the Netherlands we are working together. I can only speak, of course, about the anti-racism movement and the LGBT movement, but this goes hand in hand. And it's so beautiful to see that other organizations are part of the anti-racism movement. So I'm also part of Kick Out Zwarte Piet, but we don't organize it alone. There are other organizations which I will not name right now, but we're not the only ones, and this is so beautiful. But also be flexible, thinking about the protest that we just organized on the 25th of July, where it was hard to deal with the municipality? Yes,
of Amsterdam.
I hate that word, but yes, it was hard to deal with them and also with the police. So be like water and be flexible. How do you navigate when the police tells you cannot march in the way that you have thought about to do it? When the police blocks you? Well, you gotta keep being flexible. I can keep going, but I know, I go?
Well, maybe just follow up on that other one that Mo gave us. Don't censor yourself too much. Have you seen yourself doing that?
Don't censor yourself too much, yes.
Was it censor or I understood censor yourself?
Censor.
Yes.
Oh, I thought about the leaderless movement. You know,
we'll be speaking about that in a minute.
Not censoring yourself. Yes, that's something that is also be like water, be flexible. And how I have dealt with it is just to be unapologetic about your message and about your aim and the things that you're doing, and not censoring yourself. But that's something that is also asked from you here in the Netherlands.
But there must be moments that it's almost tempting to do so.
No.
No?
No. Censoring myself.
No, I mean, because of all the, the resistance that you meet, no?
No, because the resistance gives me energy, gives me fuel. That means that I'm on the right track. So if I would censor myself, that means that I will actually, diminish my fight? Like, why would I do that? Because others cannot handle my message. Hell no. I'm here to stay.
Good, that's a fierce beginning.
Keep standing.
Please do stay with us, Naomie. We'll be coming back to you. This is a short introductory round. Mattia Santori. I'll never forget that name. You are the founder and one of the faces, at least, of the Sardine movement in Italy. You guys have mobilized huge numbers of people as well against Matteo Salvini's Lega and other far-right groups. What is your main takeaway from Mo, from Hong Kong? Your main takeaway from what Mo has just shared with us?
The thing I liked the most, it was the know your enemy, because finally every protest movement has an enemy. So in our case, it's not a strong enemy. We don't have a Chinese government or Chinese power. We don't really fight for our freedom. I mean, it was a romantic protest. We fought against the populism, against the bad politics, the sad politics, the old politics. So it was kind of different, but it's
so
cool.
Your enemy is not Salvini alone, for that matter.
No, it was the way the politics became in Italy and in Europe and in the States and in almost everywhere. So after watching Brexit, after watching Trump election, after watching several years of Salvini's or Le Pen in France getting advances in the politics, like if it was so easy for them to get the power, we say, okay, let's do something, at least in our region, at least for our land. So it was a simple idea, and it was cool how, I mean, I didn't hear the word, but I think work together is always involve other people. So the mass movement, the protest movement has to be a mass protest because we don't have money. I think nobody at this panel has really great money because we fight the power. So the power has the power, and we have to create the power with the mass.
On how you mobilize people and how you have managed to do so, we'll be definitely speaking. I first want to follow up on this know your enemy advice, because you describe a rather broad enemy for that matter, if it's the populist movement or... what have you got to know about your enemy in the last years? I mean, do you understand them better?
Yeah, it was harder and harder every day we spend with these protests, because at the beginning our enemy was a single protest. So we were born, we were suggesting to, I mean, we were supposing to be born for one single day, and then we got into a mass international protest because there were Sardines all over the world. So our first event was a fixed moment. Our enemy was collecting 5,000 people in a sport arena, and we want to get 6,000 Sardines or people in the main square of Bologna. So this was our enemy. So we knew the borders, we knew the panel, we knew the territory. This was our advantage. We knew the city. We could talk to the people because the enemy was an invader. So it was a national leader coming in our city. So we were stronger than him. And this was the first know your enemy. And then when we got a national mass protest, it was getting harder because it's harder to find. So we ask every territory to know their land and to build their own protest, to fight, to use creativity, because I don't really know about Naples, we don't really know about Sicily, we don't really know about, I don't know, north of Italy. So everyone know his land and has to protect the land politics for
It's interesting
cities.
the language you use to protect the territory. Already
We are romantic. This is our problem.
Not even romantic, but also very, very strong language, I guess. Let's see if we have fixed this time lapse now. Let's just give it a try. Are we up for a try? Yeah, let's see what happens when we, for example, try to make a connection to Prague, where we have Benjamin Roll, because this is still our introductory round. Benjamin, I'm going to tell the audience that you are the co-founder of the Czech anti-government movement, protest movement, A Million Moments for Democracy. Last summer, you helped draw over 250,000 people to a demonstration against Czech Prime Minister Babiš. Those demonstrations were the largest since the Velvet Revolution in your country. Benjamin, let's hope that you hear me. For those who don't know your movement, what is the main goal of Million Moments?
Well, there are two answers to that. And hi there to Amsterdam. The first thing was the protest against our prime minister, and that we want him to resign because he is in huge conflict of interest. He is criminally prosecuted. He is the typical example of a populist who does not care about any values or principles. He just wants money and power and connect his business to our state so closely that it really soon will be hard to know any difference. But since we began with protesting against him, we realized that there is a much bigger goal in our society. And we realized that our protests were beginning of something bigger than just some wave of protest against government, because the main message of our movement is that we want to bring together as many people as possible for the simple goal, for a simple sentence: we care about democracy and we are ready to defend it. Because we are still a free and democratic country, that is a good thing, but this is something that is really difficult to held, because our democracy, such as in whole world, is in danger. And one of the biggest problems in society is that people don't believe in democracy, in democratic institutions, and they don't believe to other people, other citizens. And it's really a huge problem, at least in Czech Republic, but I see it's more global thing.
And to follow up on that one, maybe, how did you gain support, for example, among the elderly of Czech people that won't protest that quickly, also because of the history of your country?
Yeah, that was something really surprising for us, that lots of older people are joining to our protests, but of course not the majority, because I think the main idea can be quite difficult to understand for people who believe that the democracy is just about voting. And they say, okay, so Babiš won the election, what is your problem? And we are trying to say, but democracy is more than just election. It's more about our everyday lives, about our attitude, and about defending the main principles and values. And that is something Andrej Babiš does not understand. And we hope that if at least 1 million people of Czech citizens will realize this, that it will make a difference. But the problem is that Andrej Babiš is a populist in the way that he is buying his voters with some good thing for them, like money for older people, cheaper tickets to trains, and so on, which is something that is really beginning to be a threat for the future because of right now for the corona crisis, which will be a huge economical crisis, and our state is not ready for it because of his moves.
Okay, thank you very much, Benjamin. Please stay with us. I'm going to continue my introductory round since we have a good connection with all of you now, it seems at least. Present with us in Paris, we have Priscillia Ludosky. She is one of the founders of the Yellow Vest movement in France and currently sitting in her own cosmetic shop. At least that was promised to me, but I do see a rather normal living room, isn't it? Yes, here's a time lapse, I guess.
Yes, sorry. Hi.
Priscillia.
Yes, I have a small shop of cosmetic, organic cosmetic, but I will have to stop my activity because I have too much project going on and it's not easy to manage all that subject.
I understand. One of your main projects is probably being part of the Yellow Vest movement. In 2018, you published an online petition about the need for lower taxes on essential goods, the implementations of citizens' initiative referendum, lower pensions and salaries of senior officials, to just name a few of your goals. Can you describe us, in order to understand your own call to action, what was the moment that made you decide to join the movement?
Actually, when I launched this petition, it wasn't with the goal to make it very, very, very big. Actually, I wanted just first of all to denounce like inequalities using the example of fuel taxes. The fact that there is no transparency with what we are paying for as a citizen, the fact that there is no that the government isn't explaining the way he use people money, people paying tax in France, because France is one of the country in Europe who taxed more, actually. And we are a country where you have public services closing everywhere. You have hospital, which has been closed, and that will continue. And during this sanitary crisis, you see that what people were saying before that crisis was just true. When they went on the street to demonstrate, to ask for more meetings, for more money in hospitals, and now we see that we have a big problem with materials. And this petition is a question for people to open a public debate, actually. But I think the time I did it was the time when people say, okay, we have to say stop now. Because when I launched this petition, I received hundreds and hundreds of emails saying, we're right, you're right. Thank you for showing that point, but now we want to go out and demonstrate in the street to denounce everything which that's which are not denounced correctly in France. So
but
after that,
following up on Mo and his advice, know your enemy. Would you say the French government is your enemy, or is it broader? Is it a broader coalition?
Actually, I think the French government says very, very early that we were the enemy, because the president say at the very beginning.
I'm still waiting. There's a double track.
Mo, someone's going to look at your technique. Thanks for sharing. We go back to Priscillia.
Yes, I was saying that at the very beginning of the movement, the President Macron said, you are a politics opponent. Before listening, before asking what's going on, before recognizing that it was a very big movement, because the first date of demonstration was in November 17 of 2018, and in France you had more than 700 points of demonstration. It was something big. And before understanding what's going on, he said, you are politics opponents. So yes, this is like an enemy now. And I agree with the fact that we have to know whose is just in front of you to know better how to fight. But we don't have the same strengths in financing, in communication power, and we are different. We have different tools, but we have to be very maybe smart using other kinds of tools to demonstrate, to organize, to work together, as he said. And another point I am highlighting, I agree with the fact that there is no leader in the movement, so it's raised on Facebook, and this is really specific because nobody was ready for it.
But I assume it can also be very challenging to be a movement without strong leaders. The question is, of course, how to make clear what is your agenda. It can get very diffuse. We'll talk about it with Mattia in a second as well. But just briefly, how did you find your way in this leaderless movement?
The first thing I had to do was to defend myself with what I had to say about the petition, first of all. Because when I did it, I've been on TV show, on debate, and I've never been a politic. I never talked with politic on TV show, on debate, so I had to go to explain why I was doing that and why it was important for me by writing this petition, and why I was concerned about that, because I have people in front of me working for the president, and they said, okay, you're not right. You're saying something wrong. You're against the environment. You're against the people who wants to fight for the environment, to preserve the environment, because I was talking about fuel, and they said, okay, you're against all the green vest. And the Ministry of the Ecological Transition just said, okay, this is the yellow vest petition against the green vest petition, because you had at this time another big petition going on for climate, to attack the government for its lack of responsibility about climate change.
Priscillia, if you permit me, I'll use the topic of your anecdote to introduce our second and last panel guest, who's digitally present with us, namely Clare Farrell from London. Is she there?
Hi.
Yes, that's Clare. Hello, Clare. You're the co-founder of the environmental action group Extinction Rebellion. Also, just to briefly know how it is personally for you. For many people, climate change is a rather abstract threat, of course. What's the moment that you felt obliged to come to action?
Well, I'd always been working in sustainability and fashion actually for a long time, or trying to, actually mostly being paid to make commercial clothing, but trying to work sustainably and ethically. And I've been educating on that for over 10 years now. So I was, before we started Extinction Rebellion, I was well aware of the state of the environmental degradation of the planet, particularly through the lens of my own industry. But I also had, I guess, a background in kind of various aspects of activism, including kind of artistic-based kind of activism, rooted in situationism and disrupting public space and things like that. And so I guess there wasn't really a tipping point for me in terms of realizing there was such a problem that we should start XR, but there was a tipping point for me in meeting the people who were researching and strategizing about how to take very effective and pointed forms of direct action and using nonviolence in a much more strategic and forceful way, I guess, if that's not quite the right word, but you know what I mean.
I think we do. We briefly touch upon the subject of leadership. I guess that's also a very actual question for you guys. What are the challenges of being part of a movement without any formal leadership, since you, as Extinction Rebellion, also operate without a formal hero, as Mo has put it?
Yeah, well, we don't aim to be a leaderless movement. I think it's actually quite important to recognize the usefulness of having leadership. And I think we need a lot of leadership rather than a leader. And in that way, having a networked and decentralized movement was always the aim of XR. But the aim has never been to be leaderless, but to encourage ourselves to form structures which can be flexible and adaptable, but which people can hopefully recognize and work within, and which can promote leadership in all different parts of the work, so that we don't become reliant on a single voice or reliant on too small a pool of people, basically, to lead everything. And also to open enough space where people can come into to step into their own power in that way. And in that work, I think we've got a tremendous amount still yet to do in terms of recognizing the need for co-liberation and helping people to rise up into their own power.
Let's stay with this subject of leadership with Mattia Santori, present here from the Sardines. Is it hard to manage a movement with friends? I mean, you brought one of your colleagues present here, and you told me before, actually, I would like to be with the two of us present here at the table. So is it also difficult to find out who's who?
Yeah, for us it was really difficult because we were born as flatmates, so even more than friends. So we were used to share the cleaning of the flat, and we find ourselves to manage like 1,000 people movement around Italy, and in a day, because we really didn't expect. So it was funny because after the first demonstration, we say, okay, who's the one talking with the newspapers tomorrow? And we say, okay, I can go. But we expect to talk with the Bologna journalists or Bologna news, like Bologna Today or this kind of local news. And actually the following day we were calling, we got call from all over the Italian newspaper, and it was pretty hard to choose. In that moment, we had the first crisis, the first of a great number of crises in these months, and we had to decide if participate to got into the media arena, and we know it's not easy. I mean, every one of us, I think, experienced that, and we decided to stay in the project, so to respond to this national call. We felt responsible for what we did, and we say, okay, if the leadership of our idea, because these are opposed to leadership, we were firmly convinced to the strongness of our idea. So we didn't want to take the leader, but we want that the idea was explained in the right way. So we say, okay, we don't want the others to tell our idea. So we go to the television, we go to the newspaper, we go to the journal.
So you are rather dominant leaders for a leadership.
Yeah, we had to accept it. It was really hard, and we transform ourselves. And I can tell my friends that I'm really happy that we are still friends, because because it's not easy to to manage all of this, and it's cool because our family became bigger. So now we have more friends than before. Not all flatmates, but.
Priscillia just mentioned her relationship also to politics, to political parties. As I understood, you, as Priscillia does, do very strongly reject any relationship with political parties, although they've approached you meanwhile. Why are you so against them?
Because we fight the old politics, so it's really hard, and I can tell you that it's really hard because I experienced 9 months of politics. I mean, we were in the same atmosphere, the same arena, the same television, and I can tell you that at least in Italy, there's not a big part of new politics or good politics, so it's really hard to deal with it, to deal with them. So you don't really trust them. We saw so many politicians that just like kind of heard us or call us to offer some, I don't know, experience or help, and finally you know that at the end, I mean, not with everybody, we don't have that everything it's bad, of course, but the most part of the time it was for their advantages, so this is our a great part of our fight, so it's really hard.
Priscillia, let's ask you briefly, in terms of coalition building, are you currently in touch with political parties in France, or do you still remain outside of this formal sphere, as Mattia has just described?
Yes, I stay as far as I can, actually. And it's really not easy because when the movements first start, every kind of political party start to call me and to try to say that the movement has been, created by them, inviting people to go in the street like it was a way to make people getting out, but on their initiative. I don't know if you see what I mean. And it's not easy because when I've been to see those political on TV show, I had all the time to say that this is a grassroots movement, this is a spontaneous initiative, this is not a political party who did it, and it's really hard to fight because they go everywhere on TV show to say the contrary, they go in the street, they go to make pictures with activists, to make them more famous in the movement, and it's really like a poison for me.
Benjamin from Prague, how's that for you? How is your relationship towards the Czech political sphere at the moment?
Yeah, well, we were and are in touch with our opposition politicians, but there are several problems with them. Our opposition is really divided. There are several parties who are trying to be against current government, but they are small. They don't have political power to be a game changer. And we are trying to say to them, we have 1 year to elections. You have to change something. You have to cooperate somehow. And you have to bring a new people to politician and new vision, because that's what citizens are missing from you. The other problem is that before Andrej Babiš, most of these parties were in the government, and they lost the confidence of people because they were corrupted. And Andrej Babiš came like a savior and corruption fighter, but he is even worse, but people don't see that because they remember the huge problems with the parties before him. And they are probably not able to show that they are changed, if they are changed. And we are trying to make people to realize that we, every single one of us, has the responsibility for the future. And what our society missed in last 30 years was active civil society. And that's what we are trying to bring back to our society, which is like the main idea of Václav Havel, our former president and freedom fighter, that without active civil society, without communities of democratic active citizens, there is just a small hope for the future of democracy. And that's what we are trying to awake in Czech Republic.
And can you describe us, can you share one of the techniques or tactics that you're using in order to do so, to re-wake those civic movements?
Well, the first thing were the protests last year, because it was protest against something, but we realized that on the protest, we tried to have a positive message, not just some negative way of protest against something, but to bring some positive attitude to our everyday lives. And the really amazing thing what happened was that our protests were not just in Prague. It was all around the Republic. There were more than 300 cities, small towns, villages, where people, for the first time in a lot of those places, start to protest. And these were roots of communities, of people who are ready to defend democracy. And that is something that we want to continue to build, because we believe that that is really important for the future in our country.
Mo, I want to give it a try with you again. Let's see if you can hear us. You said in terms of...
I think it's fixed.
It's fixed. Great. That was a very swift response. Great. You said it took a long time for most Hong Kongers to accept the truth that fighting within the institution alone will never get you democracy and freedom. In terms of talking about how actively you engage with the political sphere, do you still have hope for a political solution in your case?
Well, right now, the situation in Hong Kong is that even the legislature election has been cancelled. And there's a huge debate even tonight whether to stay in the legislature or not, because China grants the current legislators one more year to stay there in the position. And we think, China does a very good job in this decision, and that is to split the people who want to stay and who do not want to stay. Well, anyway, I think the direct answer to your question is I don't think there's any room to make a change within the institution here in Hong Kong, but there are some things that we can utilize the legislature. For example, resources. Anyone who stay in office will have the resources to employ employees. And during this movement in Hong Kong, we do need money. I think that's a very realistic question, and we have media attention as a legislator. So there are some we can get use of the institution. But this alone, I don't think we can make any changes.
Let's follow up on media as a topic. You mentioned that there are many unseen actions taking place that are very important for the internal cohesion of the protest, but not being reported on by media. What relation do you have towards media now? I mean, do you still have enough media helping you to spread the message despite the harsh campaign from the Chinese government?
Right. I think... Media. Well, I'm thankful for the media. I think Hong Kong still has media attention for many reasons. And I think the most important reason is that Hong Kong is an important city in many aspects, for economy or for geopolitical reason. But I think media attention alone, still, it doesn't help anything. We have got media coverage for over 1 year. And what do we get now? The situation has been worsened. So while we are fighting, China is also trying its best to crack down on Hong Kong. And it does very slowly, very smartly, and very timely. China will, with the help of Hong Kong government, will prosecute people while there's no media attention, for example. So I think media does help us in this long process to go to our targets. Mm-hmm. But I think right now only media it's not magic.
In terms of is media helpful, yes or no, I'd like to ask Claire from London. You use non-violent civil disobedience to raise awareness for climate change, as you've just put it. But in the media, the movement is often criticized because it seems to emphasize shock value and disruption rather than constructive dialogue, as it is called. What is your response to that?
Well, you may or may not know that just recently in the UK, we blocked a road leading to a printing press, which prevented the delivery of some newspapers for several hours. And the majority of the newspapers were from the Murdoch press, which...
That's hardly a coincidence.
An international audience will all know about Rupert Murdoch's position in the world. But that has definitely affected very much our press coverage. We've been in receipt of some disgusting treatment from the UK media since that action, not just from Rupert Murdoch's media, but also seeing most parts of the UK media sort of close ranks in with the government and join a conversation about freedom of speech and freedom of the press, when actually, in fact, this was a symbolic act to just delay some newspapers for a very short amount of time and point the finger to the catastrophic failure of the media to help the public to understand the situation that they're currently in. And I would say that if people think that we're using shock tactics and trying to be alarmist about the climate emergency, that they really need to check the facts and understand that looking at the wildfires that are blazing now and have done in all over the world this year, you don't need to look to the future to worry about climate change. It's right here. The effects are right here. It's extremely, extremely urgent that people get with that programme, and the media has a very big public service job to do to help people to come along with it. And a recent report that came out just a week or so ago in the UK said 2/3 of the British public don't know what net zero means, even though it means it will change the way they heat their home, the way they travel, the car they drive, the food they eat, how they live their lives. It will implicate everything about their lives, and they don't know what that actually means. That is a tremendous failure of communication on the part of the government and on the media. And so, all of the aspects are implicated here in that we have an urgent job to do in public information, aside from everything else.
I'll suggest we will continue with a second panel round in which we explore a bit more on other effective forms of protest. We've been talking about going onto the streets, the classic way of protesting for that matter. But there are, of course, ways in which art and activism reinforce and enrich each other. You guys, all of you present here, take use of different forms. Let's first have a look at some video footage from what you have been doing.
This is not about you. And if you think this is about you, then you're being freaking arrogant, because this is about us. We are queer. We are here. We are queer.
Naomie, You are a trained choreographer at Amsterdam's Academy of Theatre and Dance, as I read. You mix the organization of protests, rallies, and designing choreographies. You say it's pretty much the same.
Yes.
What would you say is demonstrating always the most effective way to protest for an activist?
I think it's one way. I cannot say it's the most effective way because you have different tactics, right? For every movement or every action that you're doing. So I cannot say it's the most effective. I can say it's very helpful and very powerful. And in relation to gathering a mass, like a mass, having that on the streets, that is a beautiful and urgent sign to society. So I cannot say it's the most effective, but it's very helpful.
But what do you mean by that it's essentially the same, that it is a choreography?
Well, for me, how I approach organizing a demonstration, it is about organizing body, space, and time. How do we organize body, space, and time? What is the space that we want to move or want to organize? How do we want to move from one point to another point? How do you want the demonstration, your visuals to look like? What do you want your visuals to do? Thinking about the choreography of the speakers. Who do you want to start first, second? What is the message that you want to, I don't know, give? Like it plays for me on a lot of levels. How do I organize this? What do I want my artwork to do? If I place it on a stage, what do I want my artwork to do? And it's the same while organizing a demonstration. What is my message? What is my art about? How does it look like? What is my decor? So for me, it's the same kind of answers or same kind of questions. And from there on, I move.
Let's go to Claire, because she is a fashion designer and visual artist, as I understood. You lead the Extinction Rebellion art team, because you guys have one, which is responsible for the Actions Group's successful branding, as you guys put it. Can you describe us, just as Naomie described how choreography and her background in choreography is important, how does design and fashion play a role in your branding? How do you use those tactics?
Well, I had a project that started before Extinction Rebellion was born, which was called Body Politic, and that was with a friend, Miles Glynn, who's an artist, and we began by making clothes that you would, we were painting jackets, we were looking at words and things, symbols that we wanted to display in sort of turning the body into a space for communication and positive resistant struggle. And so that really was an art project that became part of the foundation of the art department for Extinction Rebellion, which has led us to produce a huge number of textile kind of artifacts, I guess. And so in terms of producing banners, we make these banners called we call them a person-sized banner, human-sized banner. They're designed so you can hold them, one person can hold it by themselves. So if you do a stage invasion, or if you find yourself in a position where you just have to be by yourself, you've got that. We also make lots and lots of patches that people apply to their garments, things that people can wear attached to their bags, to their backpacks, and thinking about that way that you can be embodying the protest when you're not at the protest, basically. So how can we make things that are not just placards? How can we make things that speak on the street, which are longer lasting and perhaps which end up being a part of your wardrobe? So that was kind of an inherent part of the design process when we were thinking about the assets, I guess, the creative assets that we wanted to make when we were setting up the movement.
Mattia, maybe for you as well, this question. Demonstrations of the Sardines are very colorful. I don't know if you guys use fashion techniques as has been just described by Claire, but they include at least a lot of singing and music, art for that matter. Do you actively make art part of the demos? Is that a strategic choice?
Yeah, we would like. I mean, I want describe us as an artist for respect to the artist. So we are like normal people trying to use the positive attitude we told about before. And this is really the point, because sometimes, at least in Italy, the protest movement were sometimes even sadder than the normal politics. So we need to be happy, we need to smile, and this was the message. So our square were collecting more people and happier people. And people, at least in Italy, are really sensitive about happiness. So if you see like young people, old people together, but everybody is smiling and singing, and we use the Sardines to create a message. We live in a world of images, and we have to transform images in bodies. So this was the challenge at the beginning. So we use the images and we use the Sardines, and we transform the Sardines in people. And this was the process. And with COVID, I mean, maybe we're going to talk later about this moment, but for now, we have to improve with creativeness.
Yes, well, thanks for making that bridge. I was about to ask you, I can imagine that in, let's say, under the current circumstances with COVID, have you guys been forced to more activism online, for example?
Yeah, it was a tragedy for us because we were like growing and collecting even 100,000 of people, and we got stuck at home. So we were stuck like sardines in the squares. It's not the same to be stuck alone in your kitchen. But we start with challenge ourselves. We always say that we are not a movement, but we are an experiment of political communication. And even in that moment, we try to find a way and an exit strategy. And the square we saw before with the great bike with a lot of plants, it was our first new demonstration after the COVID lockdown. And we collect 6,000 plants, so we call 6.000 piantine instead of 6.000 sardine. And we organize this kind of how do you say, crowdfunding on the square. So instead of the bodies, we have plants. And every plant, we collect €8 for every plant. So we collect, with help of the municipality, we collect €60,000 for the culture. Because in Italy, tourism is like financing the culture. And as we don't have tourism, we don't have culture. So we have a lot of problem with the culture financing. So we were like doing the same, not against I mean, it's a form of protest against populism because we solve a complex problem with a simple idea without, I don't know,
ask your
lying the people. I mean, without cheating the people.
Let's ask Claire for that matter. What changes did Extinction Rebellion make in this COVID period? Have you stumbled upon new tactics that you didn't use before?
Well, I definitely think it's affected the way that our time on the streets has just been in London, for sure. We organised several different actions, which some were much smaller groups of people and more pointed kind of targets, rather than what we've done previously, which is very, very large groups of people and people camping out and stuff. But I think one of the things which has been extremely challenging for us is that unlike maybe some other groups that would say they have been born out of digital organising, we've built our movement on face-to-face organising, meeting in real spaces, holding regular local group meetings. And I think that for the networks of rebels all over countries, like in the UK, there has been quite a serious contraction in the numbers because the meetings haven't happened. And it's a personal connection thing that we're really sort of in the business of organising around. And obviously you don't get somebody to click a button on Facebook to agree to go and get arrested or go and do something that's very seriously, risking their personal liberty. That requires a build-up of real trust and real people in real spaces. And so it's really, really been difficult for us. And I totally, my heart goes out to all the people in this space who will have suffered all the same struggles with not being able to meet and touch and speak, and connect properly. So I think for me, that's been a really, really major problem. problem. And I hope very much that we get over this next wave as quickly as possible. But at the same time, I'm really proud of the people in the UK who could go out and felt well enough and bold enough to go out recently, because it looks like we've just taken that opportunity at the right time, because we're looking like many parts of the UK are about to go back into lockdown. And I was very, very worried that we would lose the whole of 2020 to not be able to go and make our voices heard on the streets. And as you'll be well aware, the ice sheets and the glaciers are still falling apart, no matter whether people are locked in their own homes or not. So, yeah.
Thanks, Claire. Naomie, I've seen you encouraging Claire as she told this story, but has been a lot of discussion about the protest on the Dam Square that you've mentioned before.
Yes.
Protesting in Corona times.
Yes.
How do you see that now? What do you feel? What's the best tactic? Should people go out?
I cannot answer that for people. People have to decide them for themselves, because I can only stand for what I think is right, and I can
Tell
only...
us.
Yeah, I think in relation to racism, because this is really talking about the dam in relation to racism. Like, racism has been a pandemic for many, many years, centuries, for Black people and people of color. And standing on that moment on the dam, nobody, while we were organizing with Kick Out Zwarte Piet, we did not imagine to have 10,000, even more people on the dam. We did not. We imagined maybe 1,000, less, 800 people. So seeing all those people, and when all those people came up, for me, that was amazing, of course. But to give like an answer if it's good or not, I cannot give that answer. I can only say people should do whatever they feel that is right. And if that means going to the streets and taking a stand against or for whatever you feel that is right, hey, pull up. But I cannot say, no, don't do this, or this is bad. No, I'm not gonna, I cannot. I did it, I organized it, and I kept organizing. That means my answer to what I think is right. And that's the only answer I can give. Because it's quite a political thing to ask me that. And also in relation, being in the space, being recorded. So I cannot give that answer. I cannot.
We understand the difficulties there. I guess because some people might be leaving for other programs. Let's see if there are any questions from people in the audience here in Amsterdam. You can also ask your questions to the panelists online. Anyone present here who wants to follow up on something that has been discussed so far. Come on, you've come all the way to the audience, so please don't leave me here. Otherwise, yes, the woman in blue here.
Yes, so how, this is a question for all of you who want to answer my question. But how do you let people listen to your message if they don't really want to listen to you? Or what is your tactic there?
Pick one of the 6 movements that you're really curious to hear.
Well, Naomie.
Oh, shit. The thing is, if people don't want to listen to you, then it's fine. I think focus on people who do want to listen to you. And in relation to me being a part of, for the past 6 years, Kick Out Zwarte Piet and doing what I'm doing, a lot of people didn't want to listen to us. But look at us now, after 6 years. A lot of people are on a point of listening. And I think it's because we directed our energy to people who do want to listen. And those who don't want to listen, at one point, they will catch up. At one point, they cannot go around us anymore, right? And I think all of us would agree on that. At one point, they cannot. So at that point, they will join. So focus on those who give your energy and do listen to you.
Other reactions from the panelists? Yes, Mo from Hong Kong.
Right. Thank you, Sophie. First off, I have to say, I think the discussion here in Hong Kong and in Europe are not really synchronized. But I will try to explain. Well, to your question, in Hong Kong, the protest last year was the product of what we have done for the past almost 23 or even longer time. So believe me, Hong Kong people, they didn't want to listen. They wanted to believe in China. The only reason why 2 million people, that's 1/4 of our population, came out was because they see a real problem. So we have been trying very hard for the past 20 plus years organize protests, to mobilize people, with the help of NGOs, just trying our best and everything. And I think the trick to mobilize people, to make them understand, to make them listen, is when their interest is heard. This sounds a little bit pessimistic, but for example, when you talk about environment, believe me, when their living environment is in hell, then they will listen. But of course, that's not what we want to. So what my advice will be to seek what they really care about. Like farmers, for example, in Norway, for example, the fishermen, they want to sell salmons to China. Then you have to explain to them why the huge market in China that you can sell all the fish to is harmful to you. So you have to understand your friends and foes, and that is the trick.
Thank you very much, Mo. Any question from the audience here in Amsterdam? Or anything the panelists would like to ask among each other? Also a possibility. Otherwise, I'll just continue. Don't worry. I guess I'll do so. Benjamin, I would like to close this round, this very eclectic round that we've made with all six of you, asking this bigger question: to which extent you feel part of a broader European or global movement, or are you merely observed in your local national context? That fascinates me, especially for your case. Do you feel the need to build a larger coalition with neighboring countries, for example, in order to help your own strive in Czech Republic?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's realistic right now in this moment, but in near years, I think it's crucial for the future of democracy in Europe. And we can see our neighbors, such as Poland or other countries such as Hungary or Slovakia, that they are all fighting similar fights to prevent democracy. And I think for the future, the European Union is really crucial for the future of democracy and even for the future of environment and so on. But it has hoped to be crucial for this in a good way, just in the case that we, the people, the normal citizens, will live in our everyday lives as democratic European citizens, and then if we realize our responsibility. And what we realize in Czech Republic is that if we can connect people who share the same goal, it will make a difference. It can make a difference. And I still believe that, even though after 2 years, Andrej Babiš is still prime minister, but you can see that something is changing in the atmosphere of society. And I believe for the future, we can continue in this work even in other countries and try to save democracy in Europe.
Thank you very much. You almost sounded like Havel there. Let's go final time to Priscillia in France. The yellow vests, would you say you feel connected with an international movement?
Actually, I was surprised that at the beginning of the movement, I was called by different people out of France just to explain and share my experience and what I wanted to do in the movement and which role I wanted to have or I have now and so on. And this is an aspect I didn't expect, actually. It was really surprising, like what we are doing now, actually. And we think that, yes, on some points, we can connect to fight against, to fight for same topics we have in common. And the international vision is not enough used. We saw the last big topic was police violence, and we are very concerned about that in France because it's increasing, and it was something already denounced since years by suburbs place of around Paris. And the country discovered now that this is a very big topic in France, and because you had a lot of people who has been targeted, more than 25 people lost their eyes, 5 people lost hands, and this is a very big subject. And maybe in this kind of subject you can connect with other people who are affected or concerned about that, and who fight for that since years, actually.
Thank you, Priscillia, for joining us as well. Mattia, final word for you. Do you have, I mean, you do have, I guess, still have incredible momentum in Italy. Do you have European ambitions as a movement?
Yeah, I think this is the missing point of our stories. I mean, we talk about sharing experience, we have common points. It's really funny because we have the 6,000 goal and they have the 1 million goal, and we some of us were born in November. So, for example, 1 million moments and Gilets Jaunes in France, Sardines. So we have common points, and we only create the trigger point. So most part of our movement just enjoy the trigger point, or just bring the trigger point to the people, to the mass. And I think it's our responsibility to create a trigger point for Europe, because we talk about democracy, we talk about environment, we talk about equality, we talk about the politics. And if we succeed in create, I mean, we can bring 1 million people, they can bring 1 million people from Czech Republic, they can bring people from France. I mean, we have people to bring, we have things to do. I mean, I would love to organize something with the Extinction Rebellion. I'd love the art team. Imagine if every political party in Europe had a art team inside the team. That's innovation. We show that there's a lot to do about innovation in Europe and all over the world. So I just dream a big concert, a freedom concert in the middle of Europe, like a zero emission concert for freedom. I think we should think about it.
Okay, well, there's 6 of you now present here. So is there anyone who says, okay, let's join operations? Let's see if we can get something moving here. See smiling faces. Yes, Priscillia, do you want to say something?
No, I said why not? That can be the first, the start of something. We never know.
Claire, final word for you.
Well, before I go, I have to say to the people in the room with you that I've got a message from the Extinction Rebellion activists who are out on the streets this weekend in Amsterdam, and they wanted to invite you to visit them. You can find all the information on their website, and that pulls in their slogan, which is lobby out, citizens in. And one of our main demands, and I think our most important demand and our least understood demand, is for citizens' assembly, which is a participatory democratic mechanism which can make decisions which, quite frankly, none of our politicians are able to. And I think that's what holds all of us all together. And often people say, you know, Extinction Rebellion, it's all about the environment, it's all about the drama of climate change or biodiversity loss. But in fact, it's a pro-democracy movement at the same time, because we know that our politics will not and cannot deal with the crisis in front of it. And we have to change democracy in order to be able to fix the problems that we're facing. So I always think that what we imagine in our sort of dreams of XR is that we're like this umbrella canopy of movements that can be a home for an ecosystem of all different types of people who are in struggle for racial justice, for equality, for to deal with society's ills, and also to deal with our environmental problems at the same time, and to deal with our democratic deficit, which we see in so many places. So yeah, if anyone on this call or in this room wants to work together, Extinction Rebellion, the door's always wide open to people, and it would be amazing to join up all of our pro-democracy work around the world, because for sure we could win with the numbers, I think, you know.
Thank you very much, Claire. Your call has been heard, I guess. Mo, I actually wanted to finish with you because you are the one who brought us together in a way with all your advices.
Thank you.
Maybe final question for you, Mo, in Hong Kong. Do you feel Europe is paying enough attention to your fight over there in Hong Kong? Do you feel supported by activists over the world?
Right. I think Europe has been paying a lot of attention to us. But as, for example, after listening to the whole conversation, I think it's proven that situation here in Hong Kong and in Europe are very different. And that's why some points that I'm talking about seems to be, you know, a little bit, I don't know, radical or just not synchronized. But anyway, very recently, I think there is a good news from Germany. You know, after a very long time of lobbying in the EU or just any European countries, you know, Germany finally adopts a new Indo-Pacific strategy. And according to the Foreign Ministry, it says the aim of the strategy is to avoid unilateral dependency by diversifying partnerships, which has been advocated by us and other groups for a very long time. I think there's a very strong relation between the protests in Hong Kong and in Europe, although it might not be seen very easily. While you are still fighting for democracy, I think China is as an autocratic country, as a world power, you know, in the EU level, China has its control of Greece, for example, or Hungary, you know, many countries. So I think democracy, the erosion of democracy in Europe has other phases and other levels. So I think you should also pay more attention to the influence by China, just like what we should also observe the election in the US and the situation in Europe, and to see the real possibility of working together between Asia and Europe.
Thank you very much, Mo. That has been noted as well. I think that brings our program to an end for now. Of course, your work, for all of you, doesn't stop here. Thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts with us. Claire, Priscilla, Benjamin and Mo from your remote places, and Naomie and Mattia here with us in Amsterdam. Let me finish for all of you at home with the words of wisdom brought to us by Wong Yik Mo in his keynote speech. When the society needs you, you have the responsibility to stand up and believe in yourself, because you have the ability to make changes. Thanks to all of you here in Amsterdam. Thanks to those of you watching at home. Please stay tuned to our YouTube channel and do not miss out on anything. Thanks again and have a nice weekend.
Thank you very much.